So are you prepared if the grid went down tomorrow? This Monday, there were a lot of power outages in Europe, and they're still experiencing these flare-ups right now. Most heavily impacted in Spain and Portugal, and we're gonna take a look at that and what all went down. And this is a reminder to everyone. You never know when the grid could go down. It could go down today. You never know. And what would happen with us? Would we be able to survive? Would you be able to survive? My name is Brandon Fogal. This is Evolution. Let's dive into this. If the grid goes down, what would your immediate reaction to be? I'm going to go post about the grid being down. I'm going to throw it up on Twitter, on Facebook. No, you can't do that. The lines of communication are down. Do you have one of those CB radios that you could still have lines of communication with everybody? I'm like I am on any of my shows, and I will always be. I'm honest with you. I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't got one of those CB radios. I need to get one. If this turns into apocalypse now, I want to be ready, and I'm sure you do as well. But then we think about, well, what would happen, like food-wise, water-wise? How are we going to survive? Would we be able to, as a community, as the United States of America, would we be able to get through it? And what would happen? But first of all, let's take a look at what actually happened in Europe with their power going down. And this is pretty wild. So on Monday, it says power is back on in Spain and Portugal, but question remains about Monday's blackout. It says electricity is pulsing through Spain and Portugal again after a massive outage knocked out power in both countries on Monday. So two are questions. It remains unclear what caused the sudden and staggering blackout, which plunged tens of millions of people into darkness and paralyzed life on the Iberian Peninsula. Authorities are investigating whether a freak event, a cyber attack, or some other cause is to blame, while airports and train stations are catching up with a huge backlog. So here's what happened. Spain's electrical grid was running as normal until 12:33 p.m., when suddenly it suffered a disturbance. Eduardo Prieto, the director of services for the grid operator Red Eléctrica, said the grid recovered after the first shock, but a second disconnection 1.5 seconds later caused a degrading of operating variables of the system, leading to a massive generation disconnection on the connection lines with France. In the space of a few seconds, 15 gigawatts of energy suddenly dropped from Spain's supply, Spanish government sources told CNN, equivalent to 60% of the electricity being consumed at the time, and the entire Spanish grid collapsed as a result. This is wild. And the only way I was able to find out that this happened was I saw it on TikTok. And what happened. But how would you react if our power went down? We are so just intertwined with our power. Our lifestyle is so just completely controlled by the ability for us to be able to turn on lights, turn on our computers, turn on our phones. And if something ever happened, and I hope it doesn't, but eventually something will eventually happen. And this leads me into, because I'm all biblical and I'm all the Bible and I'm all, looking for the signs of the times and all that. And I'm always wondering, I jump into this rapture. I don't know if you've ever thought about the rapture. People if you've seen any of the Tim LaHaye movies, Left Behind, all that stuff, and I've always went back and forth, or is that really going to happen? Are the Christians just going to be just taken out of this world before stuff hits the fan? And what would that mean for everybody else? Would people on this planet, if everybody saw suddenly all the Christians are vanished and they're out of here, how would they react? What would they do? They don't have a thorough knowledge of the Bible, but maybe some of them do. And so I'm thinking near term, because the power could go down before something like that happens. To be honest, I've never been on where I think the Christians are just going to vanish and that we're going to be gone. I always thought the Christians will be here when the worst times happen. And the whole of Christians being taken out of that, it's a whole theology of there's the difference between Jewish people and Christians. and the Christians are taken out of, and then it's the Jews are here to fight, survive kind of thing, and they're the ones in the last days. Because they're the ones going through that Jacob's tribulation. But if you just think of it just in the sense of, what would you do, if the power itself went down, if it just dropped, the lights just went off? You couldn't even go start your car. Say an EMP goes off, we can't, every electrical circuit is fried. We can't turn on our phones. We cannot turn on the TV. We can't see what's going on. How is news going to get to us? In that situation, would you immediately panic, or have you prepared? I have certainly not prepared as much as I should. And there are things that we should do. I think that we need to be able to know how to survive. We need to be able to know how to make a fire. We need to be able to know how to keep food from spoiling. And that goes into like canning. If you've ever heard of canning, and the foods that you grow, can you get enough to keep so that it lasts for days and days? If you've seen, there's always these people that promote supply kits, that food kits that can last for a long time. And that might be the best thing you could do, preparing for if anything were to happen, because if the grid goes down, it doesn't matter anymore how much you have put into just acquiring as much wealth as you can into your digital bank account or your stocks. They're kaput. They're gone. They don't matter anymore. All that matters is physical assets at that point. The government, what would it do? It would have to immediately initiate martial law. We would be in a state where the government is almost a military force that we run into each day, where we walk around. I'm just trying to think of what it would look like. Say I step outside, I don't have any. There's not really a store anymore. I think we would get all tribal. We would get tribal, and everybody would start having to, rebuild, stores and commerce in some way. What you would physically have on hand, cash, would be at that point, because that's what the people in Europe were experiencing when they lost power. They couldn't use their phones anymore to buy things. They had to. It was whatever physically they had on them, physical currency. So that is also a very good thing to do, to store up at least some of that if you can. Not have it all tucked away in the bank. Throw some of it in your mattress. Just for those rainy days. But I'm just trying to think, like, what would it be like, and what would life be like? I would say it would be smart to have a spot picked out, like, if stuff goes haywire, because a lot of people aren't immediately always with their family, and if crazy stuff starts happening, and you can't call them anymore, it would be smart to have a place this is where we're going to meet up. At least this is where we're going to get together, so we can at least find each other. But I think, the United States, there are good people in the United States that we could come together, that we could come together and try to work things out, but some people it could turn into the Book of Eli. Eventually, it could turn, and it probably wouldn't take long for some people to do that, so it might be smart as well to stock up on some guns and ammo. Not to go out there just to do anything wrong, but for defense. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot of things, and I'm just trying to think, how would I react if something like that happened? What would my gut instinct, what would my first inclination be? Because, the whole timetable and timeline of when Jesus is going to come back, because he's going to come back eventually. Are Christians going to be here to see it? Are we going to be on the front lines? Are we going to be here? Or are we going to be taken out of here? And then in between now and then, because, it does seem like things are just getting like crazy heated up and going in an apocalyptic direction. Like at any moment, and the only thing that is ever restraining it is God's grace. If God removed his hand, there are so many, at any moment, these countries out there would want to just unleash nuclear weapons at any moment. They would. And the only thing that I would say that is ever holding their hand back, and it starts in their heart, God is restraining their heart. But if he were to remove his hand and let guys just be guys and just do whatever their heart wanted, we saw flare-ups of that happen with Hitler, when he tried to take over the world. He tried to take over the world. And I'm sure there are a lot of other crazy communist dictators that are out there that would love to do the same thing. And if they have their hand constantly over nuclear buttons, you know? But as Trump says, he says to the North Korean leader, he says, but my red button actually works. I mean, hopefully we never see a nuclear war, but it is always a possibility. But it's not even that. This is a nuclear anything did not happen. This is just the grid going down, power going down. How would we react? And we would not know, is it going to be off for a day, a week, a month, years? Are we ever going to see power again? Are we going to have to build it again? I wouldn't know how to turn on a light bulb. I don't know how to turn on a light bulb. I don't know how to make a light bulb. I don't know how these things work. And there's so many people, I can't believe people know how to do those things. I do not get it. And I have all this technology around me. I'm able to kind of operate in it, but I don't know what at all is going on inside of it. I don't know how this internet is working. I mean, it's scary to think the things I don't know. And I'm just trying to think the smartest people out there, the people that are putting these things together, they probably just know a little nook and cranny of what is actually happening in these power things just flowing through and just making all this work, this digitizing and all this, making pixels and all that. Like, but if you probably ask them, they probably like, I don't know. I have no idea. It's like, did aliens give us this technology that we have? Are we experiencing a Men in Black situation that we have this? And when I say aliens, a lot of times aliens can be demonic, you know? I mean, that's where you always hear the whole Apple thing, you know? It was founded on something satanic, you know? I just seen these videos. They could have just be conspiracies, but like that, you know, Steve Jobs his first Mac was out there sold for $666. And then the whole iPhone, you know, the Apple sign, the biting of the apple. Did we get some of this crazy technology? Was it given to us from the gods of heaven? I don't know. I don't know these things. And I want to know these things. But I'm these scientists that are out there that just know these crazy things, they have this immense knowledge. I bet if you ask them, they probably just know a sliver of what is actually going on. They couldn't tell you how their drywall got put up. They couldn't tell you how drywall got put together or how there's so many things that we probably just know a sliver. We don't know all the ins and outs of everything. I think we sometimes think we're so smart, but we're not. And sometimes people just don't say it. We just assume everybody knows everything about everything when actually we know we're too scared to say how much we don't know. So, if the grid goes down, how are you going to react? I mean, it's definitely worth thinking. I mean, I might go full prepper mode. I don't know. And I'll keep you posted on that. And you keep me posted on your full prepper mode if that's at all your thing. Because it's not everybody's thing. So, all right. If you like this video, make sure you smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. My name is Brandon Fogal. I do this every day at 7 a.m. Central Time. So, have a great day, everyone.